It ain't a man's world.
You go,
no
girl.
more sugar and spice.
And everything nice.
It ain't a man's world.
You go,
no
girl.
more sugar and spice.
And everything
It's a
nice.
cheap thing and it's all in me. I can be anything that I wanna be. Don't consider me a minority. Open up your eyes and maybe you'll see it's a cheap thing and it's all in me. I can be anything that I wanna be. Don't consider me a minority. Ladies, help me out if you agree.
Well, hello. Thank you for joining us for the Black Women Podcasters. What is this? This is like a mixer, Saturday night mixer. And we have a wonderful panel of lovely ladies who are out in these podcast streets making our voices heard and making a difference. I want to make sure that everyone is mic'd up and ready to go. If you got something to sip on, relax, kick back, and enjoy the conversation. I want to introduce myself. I am Lavinia at SheBeShonuff on Twitter and host of the Just Thinking Out Loud podcast, where we talk about news, politics, entertainment, pop culture, current events, and of course, general ratchetness. And I would like the other ladies to introduce themselves, starting with Miss Tiffani Bliss.
Hi, everybody. I am Tiffani Bliss Brown, and I host Everybody Loves Bliss, which is, if you haven't heard it, it's a podcast that is good wine and good conversation. That everybody has a story. So if you give them time, an ear, and a glass of wine, they will tell you their story, unfiltered, uncensored, and unedited. And basically that's it. Conversation, no interviews.
All right. Thank you very much for joining us. And, of course, we have Miss CJ from the Black Astronauts podcast.
Peace, everybody. So, yeah, this is CJ from the Black Astronauts podcast. So on our show, it's just a group of friends, and we discuss politics, technology, pop culture, just pretty much whatever we want to talk about that week. And we can be found at www.blackastronautspodcast.com, and you can find me on Twitter at CJ Taught Me.
All right. Thank you very much. Moving on to Miss Hiroja Shibe.
Hi, this is Hiroja Shibe. I have a podcast called Musings of the Shibe podcast, where I talk about technology, cryptocurrency, privacy, how technology and politics intersect, and robots. So it's just a solo podcast of me just talking about how people can try to improve themselves and protect themselves online.
Awesome. And moving on to Miss Kymberly Nichole.
Hello. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, this is Kymberly Nichole. I am one half of Somethin in Common. My podcast is with my husband, Michael Wright, and we talk about everything from politics, social media, celebrities, entertainment, and everything in between from a his and her standpoint, from a couple standpoint. So we sit back and have some pillow talk so you guys can hear what we talk about every day on Somethin in Common.
Great. And moving on to Miss Leslie Mack.
Hey, everyone. I'm Leslie Mack, and I host two podcasts. One is called the Ferguson Response Network podcast, and I have a co-host named Vicki. We talk about issues related to the Black Lives Matter movement and the movement for Black Lives. And my other podcast is called The Interracial, Jawn, and I co-host that with my husband, very white guy, and we talk about pop culture and television, movies, current events, really anything that's on our mind from our unique perspectives as one very white guy and one mostly black woman. And you can find me on Twitter at Leslie Mack, that's M-A-C.
Thank you very much. Miss Michelle-Calloway is on the line with us as well.
Hello, everybody. This is Michelle Matthews-Calloway, co-host of the Swirl World podcast. We podcast from the swirlworld.com, where we encourage Black women to get their relationship life by dating and marrying interracially. On the podcast, we have the conversations that are designed to meet our overarching mission, which is, regardless of your relationship choice, we want Black women to live their best life.
Excellent. And finally, last but certainly not least, Miss Vicki Doe. Vicki, are you on the line with us? Okay. Did we lose Vicki for a little bit? Think so. All right. Well, maybe she had to step out for a second or step away, and hopefully she'll rejoin the discussion just briefly. Basically, the way that this is set up, we've got just a few topics. Hopefully, we'll keep this within an hour. We will cover two things where we talk about shop, just running things as the podcaster, and then we'll move on to a couple of current events. So as you see, we have quite a few perspectives. We got podcasters from different shows with different backgrounds, so this should be an interesting conversation. First thing I wanted to touch on is basically, like, how is it that you got into podcasting, and what is it that keeps you going, keeps you maintained, and how long have you been doing it? Let's start with Leslie.
Yeah, I've been podcasting about a year now, actually. I think we just did our 67th or 68th show, and I started podcasting because I started listening to some really great podcasts, and my husband and I thought, oh, that would be cool. People always say that we're fun to listen to, so we bicker and argue and all of that fun stuff. So we thought, let's give it a try and see if we like it, and if we liked it, we continue doing it, and so far we really enjoy it. For us, it's really, I don't know, it sounds strange to say because it's a public thing, but for us it's become kind of this concentrated time to just sit and listen to each other. So I think that's what keeps me in it. You know, we have these topics that we talk about, and sometimes it's stuff we didn't know that the other was thinking, and again, just because when you're doing a podcast, half of the work is listening. So especially if you have somebody else there, or only when you have somebody else there. So for me, that's what keeps me going. And for my other show, I just saw a need. There really wasn't anybody only talking about the movement for Black lives. And so Ricky and I just decided to get together and talk about stuff as they come up. So that's what got me into it, and I love doing it.
Yeah, it seems like a common thing that most people say. Is just that usually we have conversations with other people about these topics anyway. You're posting stuff on Facebook, you're posting stuff on Twitter. Hell, Twitter, might as well talk about it so other people can hear it and maybe chime in, call in, and kind of interact with the public. How about you, CJ? Your mic's muted.
Yeah, sorry, my mic was muted.
Sorry.
So, I've been doing this for about 2 years. So the way I got started, I used to never really listen to podcasts at all. And I wrote for a blog with Ken and Kai, who's now on the Pisces Life. We had a blog called Sex and the Sisters. And Ken listened to the Black Astronaut podcast. It was all guys at that time, and they eventually brought her on, and Erin had an idea to have a show that became Ladies Launch, which was all women. And so pretty much everybody who was on the blog, myself, Ken, Kai, and Leticia, we started Ladies Launch. And you know, from there, Kai and Leticia started Pisces Life. They're doing their own thing. And I've come over to the Black Astronauts podcast. And that's pretty much how it's gone. And since then, I've fallen in love. And it's really interesting, the shift in the dynamic from being the only woman on the podcast to being on a podcast with all women. The topics are different. The energy is different. But I still love it.
Yeah, I mean, I love listening to the Black Astronauts podcast, and those days where it's kind of nice to have kind of like that feminine balance or that feminine input. Like, I love listening to guys' podcasts, but there's something about having that extra voice kind of jumping in and saying stuff, and you hold it down too, because I know they get to cutting up sometimes, and I'm like, okay, CJ about to get them.
Yeah. And I've got big shoes to fill because Cam would really get them together. Yeah, so sometimes, you know, they have their perspective, and and I do what I can. The only thing is I can't really keep up with them on the nerdy stuff. I'm trying to get more on their level with the video games and the technology, but I'm just so analog. I can't help it.
All right. How about Miss Tiffani Bliss? So how did you get into podcast, and what keeps you in it, and how long have you been doing it?
Okay. The first thing, I've been doing it for about a year, and I got in because my co-producer, Al Morgan, had a podcast that he was producing called The Verve Session, and he called me in to be a guest on the show because he likes my perspective on things, and so he had me as a guest on the show talking about film and being an actress and what have you. And after the show, he asked me would I be interested in hosting a podcast. Now keep in mind, the Verve Session was the only podcast I had known about. I had only agreed to be a guest because I thought, as an actress, we take any opportunity to promote ourselves. And so he talked me into it, and he let me decide how I wanted to do it, because I didn't see podcasting as something that anyone listened to. I'm like, I wasn't familiar. So, I listened to a few other ones and decided I'd give it a try. I didn't really plan on staying. I planned on just kind of appeasing them and kind of moving on. But, as the guests started coming and the flow started happening, like I said, it's been a year. This is my season. And what keeps me going is I think it's the people. And I think it's when I'm on other jobs and say to me kind of matter of fact, like, oh, I love your blog. Or, excuse me, I love your podcast. I listen. It's usually like someone I'd never expect to be listening to Everybody Loves Bliss. And so it's the freedom of being able to say what I want to say, uncensored and unfiltered. That's the other thing. I kind of get that off. It's easier for me than Facebooking. Facebook for me is still, how should I say this? I still feel a need to censor on Facebook, I guess, because of some of the people that are connected on my Facebook, whereas if you are going to Everybody Loves Bliss, you are seeking me out in a different way. I don't know if that makes sense, but there's a freedom that I feel on the podcast that I don't feel anywhere else. So that's really what. Plus, I like to drink. We drink we have wine on every show, so I like that aspect of it. So it's a lot of things, but it is the freedom. It is the ability or the feeling that I can say whatever I want to say.
Excellent.
On the show.
And Hiroja, how did you get into podcasting?
Sorry. Well, I've been a listener of podcasts back to when you had to plug in and download from iTunes. And when I started getting into this particular technology that I'm involved in, cryptocurrency, I noticed that there was like a big void between those who are tech savvy and those who are not. And also it's a very white male-centric space. So there wasn't a lot of female voices, and there wasn't a lot of people of color. And I found that there needed to be someone out there that was willing to talk to people that are interested but don't understand the technology but want to be part of it. But at the same time with a different perspective that wasn't so white male-centric or so upper middle class. I didn't quite understand that kind of viewpoint of the world is not a global viewpoint. And I felt that there needed to be somebody out there that spoke for different voices and different people and interact in a different fashion. So that's kind of how I got involved and wanted to share my experiences and my thoughts and stuff like that.
It's funny you bring that up. Just recently today, somebody posted an article where they listed black podcasters that are making a difference in podcasting. And I saw a comment at the end of the article where a white woman said, I feel like that we're in a place where we should be just talking about the best podcasts. And I responded by saying, well, if it was just a list of the best podcasts, the best ones, quote unquote, would be white podcasts just by default. Like, it's not very difficult, but, we do kind of have to seek out podcasts with our own voices because it is a predominantly white male dominated field. I mean, that's what you're going to find. So yeah, we definitely need to have our voices heard. Miss Nichole, how'd you get into podcasting and what keeps you going with it?
We pretty much got into podcasting, I have to say on a whim, because we wanted to expand the way we interacted with our readers on the blog and our Facebook group and the people on our Facebook page, and it was something we wanted to do in 2014 to expand, and so let's do a podcast. Had no idea really what all was involved with it. And what keeps us going, we had our 1-year anniversary on June 9th, was the overwhelming response we received from our base and how much they enjoyed the show. And then not only that, we found out we loved it. We loved being able to talk and interact and have guests on the show, and not just the writing part, but the speaking aspect of it and connecting with people in that way. So we're 90 episodes in, and we're going to keep going.
Well, we seem to have lost like 2 women from our panel. Hopefully they'll be able to make it back on. But just so that things don't get too sterile, and we're just kind of just going one at a time here, like, who didn't think they were going to last doing this more than like a couple of weeks? Because I'll be the first one to say, my co-host and I, we didn't think it was going to last more than 6 weeks. We thought it'd be something we'd have fun doing, and here we are 2 years later still doing it.
I know, I thought that, I think somebody had mentioned to me that the average podcast is over after 10 episodes, and I was not confident we'd make it to that 10 episodes. I'm surprised that we continue to do it and that we it's probably the fun part. That's what's kept me. I like it.
I'm getting a little feet background from somebody. I'm not sure
that
who it might be.
Michael there?
No.
Okay. So the average is 10. I hadn't even kept count of how many episodes I've done. I think when we first started doing it, we were all over the place. So we would just record, and I think we probably got 200 episodes floating around. I don't even remember the first. It's such a blur from the first 40. Because we started out on Blog Talk Radio. Did anybody else start out doing Blog Talk or some of the other platforms?
I started on Soundcloud, which is where I still am, and I'm on Stitcher and iTunes now. Blog Talk, I hadn't had the chance of trying out, but do you recommend it? Let me ask.
It's easy. It's definitely easy. It was a great starting point for me. So that's how it worked. I think we kind of had issues with sound quality. And now they kind of charge you, $40 a month to use the platform to have unlimited time to record and unlimited storage. Other than that, the free setup, you can have 30 minutes of live streaming time and then a total of 45 minutes, because they'll give you an extra 15 minutes for anybody that calls in directly. So, I mean, it's something to use. They have the chat room set up. I guess if that's the kind of thing where you really want to be interactive. There are other platforms. Does anyone here use Spreecast?
Okay, can you guys hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yay, Vicki's back on.
I know, it took me forever.
Vicki, just quickly, can you introduce yourself and your show, please?
Okay, well, I'm Dr. Vicki Haywood Doe. And our show it's all about health and fitness, Vicki Doe Fitness. And I have a co-host, and she's Dr. Virginia D. Banks Bright. And what we do is we talk about health and wellness and that type of thing. We look at research articles. We talk different perspectives on what's happening. If we want to talk about some of the latest news, we talk about that. So it's really all about health and wellness. That's what we try to focus on.
Okay. And
could you hear me?
Yes, we got you. And how did you get into podcasting, and what keeps you doing it?
Well, I got into podcasting by fluke, so to speak, because this same show was an actual radio show, and it was only just me doing it from 2002 until 2006. And so then I decided just about maybe a year ago to maybe change it to a podcast format and have a co-host. And so that's what we did, and it's catching on. It's catching on. So I guess that's cool, huh?
Yeah, it is. But and Kymberly, who's back with us, I believe we didn't get to hear from you as far as how did you get into podcast and what keeps you doing it?
Oh, I got into podcasting with Michael. He actually had a podcast for a while prior to ours. So he just, thought maybe we should do something together. He felt like he wasn't that great on his own. So he thought, well, let's do this together, and kind of brought me in. I honestly didn't want to do it because I was like, who's going to want to listen to me? I don't think this is going to be a good idea. But he brought me in kicking and screaming, and now I'm here, and I love it. We're 27 shows in. We'll be doing our 28th next week. And it's been great. We've gotten a great feedback, and it's actually just been fun. It's been fun to work with him and, to talk about everything that's going on in this crazy world. So I kind of got in just by him saying, come on, just do it.
Well, man, you got in there and you then took over, didn't you, though?
I always say I'm the talent of the two.
I know that's right. So where was I? Spreaker, the different platforms that everyone uses. Does anyone use like Spreecast or some of the other more interactive ways of, doing your podcast with the public?
I know we've started doing it on BAP. While we record our shows, we use Spreecast, and they're like people get into the group chat so they can interact with us while we're recording. It's pretty cool. I don't know the logistics of it because Aaron's the producer, but it's kind of nice if you don't necessarily record live shows to be able to record it live so people can interact with you while you're recording, but also have that option of people going and listening to it off of iTunes or Stitcher. So I like it.
Nice.
You get some immediate feedback.
Yeah, that is the good thing about it. Now, you said something about the logistics, and that was one of the other topics I wanted to bring up. Thing about independent media is that most of us that I know of, we're doing everything from conception to actually recording the show, getting your notes together, what you're going to cover. Oh, Lord, help me when it comes to the editing. Jesus, take the wheel. The editing takes about as long as it takes to record, if not longer, putting it out there, marketing. Like, that takes so much effort. Like, what do you do to kind of streamline all of that? Or do you have people that help you? Are you doing it by yourself? Because I know it's me. I got a co-host, but I'm like the one that really drives the ship on this one.
Can I just say to you, one of the things that I decided when I decided that I was going to go ahead and stick with this, that I am not tech savvy. I have a co-producer, like I said, Al, and basically, let me tell you, what I decided with this show, one of the things is that I wanted to keep it honest in terms of the conversation. And again, it's not an interview that I'm having when I'm guest. It is really an honest, no-holds-barred conversation about whatever the topic is that we're talking about. So we don't edit. I tell the guests, again, whatever you say is whatever you say. So we don't edit. So what happens with the show is that I will record the files, and I just started doing that in the past couple of months because I wasn't even comfortable enough recording myself, but I record the shows myself so I can go on location. And I send the files over to my producer, and he just does whatever he needs to do to upload them. So in terms of making the show format easier, and for me, more in line with what I wanted to do, we don't do any editing of the show. So when you hear Everybody Loves Bliss, the conversation is as it is. So that's our way of making it easier and streamlining the process.
This is Leslie Mack. I know that we don't do a lot of editing. I produce our show, so I do all of our editing that does get done. And just generally speaking, my rule of thumb is that we don't really do much editing. Maybe we'll take a break in between getting a guest on, like calling them into the show, but other than that, we just let it go and put it up as quickly as possible. We do work really hard on the sound on the front end, so we spend a lot of time making sure that the mix is correct in the recording levels, so we don't have to worry about any post-production. And I just don't have any interest in spending, hours editing something that I recorded already. So for me, that's been a big thing. And then as far as the promotion part, I found Hootsuite to be huge just to make sure that I have steady streams of tweets going out from my account, from Harry White Guy's account, and from the show account when there's a new episode or we're promoting something. And then we don't use Spreecast yet. To be perfectly honest, like, I'm afraid nobody will show up for it. So I have been, like, not really wanting to do it because of that, because I feel like if I'm going to do it, I need to kind of make sure that there's going to be people in the chat room to interact with, and I've been hesitant. But we've been doing some live periscopes and just seeing how many people join that. And I think we're going to keep doing that for a while just to gauge live interest in seeing us, and then maybe make a decision based on that to do Spreecast. So that's just what we've been doing right now.
Cool. Anybody else that does like editing or any kind of like behind the scenes for the production of your podcast? Hiroja?
Well, it's just myself, and I have a hard time editing myself. Like, I used to edit early on in the shows very heavily, and I'm way past 100 right now. And so I just, after 50, I was like, I can't do this anymore, because I was like getting all the breaths out and all the pauses, and it just seemed very unnatural the way the show was running. So I just kind of like just do a quick edit to make sure there's no horrible noises in the background or anything like that, and just let it be a free flow, because it's just me having a conversation with whomever is listening to it. That's how I feel like it should be. And so when you're speaking to somebody, you're not like worrying about your breaths or your pauses, or if you're stuttering or stammering too much. You're just having a natural flow of the conversation. So I found that relieved my stress level a lot, because I just couldn't stare at the screen and look at all the little, I don't even know what the technical term is for the program. I use Adobe, and it just was driving me mad.
Yeah, like for me, we when I first started, I did a whole lot of editing, because we would have more ums and uhs and stutters and, girl, let me go do something real quick. Like, we would record like we weren't recording. So there was a lot of times like, girl, I'll be back, I need to get a sandwich. So you had to go back and edit that out. Right now, it's like I'm at a point where I try to put in music, do things in the background just to kind of make it sound nice, and at least sound like I try to do some little extra things just to add to the experience. I think my biggest issue is my laptop. It's a struggle equipment. So that's my biggest problem. But, you know, I think that's probably been the one thing up until I decided not to edit as much that kept me from putting out as much as we probably should have, like, earlier. Because, you know, I'm not tech savvy either. I did a lot of things where I learned by doing. So anyone, I guess I just brought this up for anyone who's listening to the podcast, because there are a lot of women who might think that, you know, I ain't got time for all that tech stuff. It doesn't have to be difficult. It doesn't have to be extremely technical. You can get, what is it? Does anybody use Audacity?
I do. I use both. I use Audacity. This is Michelle from the Swirl World. I use Audacity and I use Adobe. And I have to say, I was kind of like you, just extremely anal, probably even to a fault. Just, I hated the ums and ahs and pauses and all that. I like a real polished show. I've kind of fallen back a little bit, or kind of eased up and let it, and not be as anal about editing, because it does take a lot of time. But I still edit.
Oh yeah, I'm thinking about right now anything that I probably could have said in the last 5 minutes. I'm thinking maybe I should take that out later on. But I'm not going to do it. I'm going to fight the urge to be like, no, you know what? You just rambled, and you just going to live with it. That's what everybody's going to hear, because that's who you are.
You know, I think there's.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think there's something to not over editing. On our show, we pretty much, because we tend to be real familiar with each other, if we say somebody's real government name or give out some kind of personal information, I know that gets edited out. If we happen to get into like a discussion about the logistics, that'll get edited out, because nobody wants to hear that. But for the most part, I think there's something to allowing listeners to hear an organic conversation, but just kind of self-editing and making sure that you don't use too many ums and ahs. Because I'm still bad about that. Every time I listen to the show, I'll hear how many times I say like, and it just drives me nuts. So, yeah.
All right. Well, I'm trying to keep an eye on the clock. We have 30 minutes left. I'm so horrible on my own podcast. I'm like, we're going to record for an hour. 2 hours later. I'm like, girl, why we do this to ourselves? So, we're going to move on to some current events. Some stuff came up, and I got to know what the ladies got to say about it. Let's start with judging a book by its name, Miss Raven Simone. Oh, yeah, I hear it already.
Girl, bye.
And I got to do it. Raven Simone said she would not hire someone with a ghetto name. But we all know that, unfortunately, a lot of resumes do get turned down. A lot of applications get shoved to the circular file if the name appears to be too ethnic. So, Black folks, should we give our kids more classic, job-friendly names?
No. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I don't know. I can't think of who says the quote. But it's something along the lines of, like, give your daughters difficult names. Like, the people have to work their mouths to get around. Something like that. But I don't think that we should adjust because of somebody else's preconceived notions. And then Raven is correct. Like, she has an extraneous hyphen and a pointless accent in her name. And she said it while she was looking like Toucan Sam. Like, that just kills me. Like, you're... what? Like, do you see what's on your... Like, I don't know. It just... I don't think we should have to adjust at all.
Nah, definitely. First of all, supremacy doesn't actually depend on what we do. That's the first thing I always like to mention. Like, it really doesn't matter what we name ourselves or what we might do. Like, none of those things actually affect the way that it enacts itself on us. So, it just doesn't even make any sense as, like, a concept. And for her, I don't know. I don't even know what to say about her. She has to be trolling, but then it's been so frequent that it makes me think, like, maybe she really does have this level of self-hatred. And I want to pray for her, but then I'm pissed off because there are girls that look up to her and have looked up to her for a very long time, and hearing her say those kinds of things when she was on a TV set for most of her childhood with girls like Keisha and Tempest and Felicia. I mean, I just don't understand. I don't understand any of it, and it's just gotten to a ridiculous
I think she's an attention seeker. Like, when it gets quiet and you're not talking about The View or Raven, that's when she comes up with something completely ridiculous. She just needs to be relevant. And it's becoming annoying. It's becoming, like, I'm ready for The View to go off. I'm done with The View. It's like, come on.
And I'm sorry. I was going to say, and I think that for a while we all believed that Raven Simone was one of the rare child and teenage actors who had gotten away with having that curse on them. You know, there's the drugs, there's the jail, there's whatever that happens. But you can tell clearly from what you see on The View that she didn't escape. Because mentally, in terms of Raven's thinking, there are some really skewed ideas about life, people, and respectability that have just shown up since she's been there. Actually, they showed up before The View. We just get to see them more clearly since she's been on The View. So clearly she didn't escape the whole teenage child actor curse. She just got it in a different way.
And it seems like she got it later. Like, she's almost 30.
You know what? I think that it's always been. I just think that it's been hidden. I mean, there's been a lot of stuff now that's surfaced because, again, as an actor or actress in the industry, we're starting to hear the things that were going on all along, kind of in the closed circle. So it was there. It was just hidden. She just got on The View and just let it hang out.
Yeah, I think she just has a platform now.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right. A platform that allows her to talk instead of just act.
Yeah.
I just want to say this real quick, Payne. As someone who was raised by someone who believed in that respectability politics and deliberately named all 7 of his children very white names, like if you were to look at our names, you would think we're like literally like Irish Americans. That's how white our names are. I find it very strange that someone would think that would make a difference, because I know, and I have a sister who does much better in life, and she's in the corporate world, where she has gone to interviews and she's had like the double take, where they were expecting to see not a black person.
Yes.
Basically. And it does not make a difference. And mind you, my dad also added all sorts of middle names as well to kind of do, I don't know, that upper middle class kind of thing that upper middle class people do. And it makes no difference. It really doesn't. And I don't think naming yourself something different or making your name more acceptable or basically more Anglo-Saxon is going to make any more difference than if someone's name was Fantasy. And I knew a girl whose literally her name was Fantasy and she was black, and there was nothing wrong with her. She was our accountant. She did everything she could do, but her name was Fantasy. And sometimes she didn't get hired because of that, and it was just very sad.
And I'm kind of wondering, like, what's classified as ghetto?
Right.
Anyway, because my name is Lavinia, and the assumption, that's a ghetto name because it starts with an L-A.
Yeah.
But it's actually an old name, and it's Latin, and it's older than most classic names like Mary and Francis. So, like, you know, just to judge somebody by their name thinking, it has to be ghetto, really doesn't say anything more about the person other than that their parents like that name.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, there are all kinds of reasons for names. And, you know, you bring up a good point. There are a lot of names that we may classify as ghetto, but are actually, like, not even African, but they're, like, Greek. Yeah, like Demetrius. And, like, Tyrese. Like, those are not, like, they become black names, but they're not black
in origin.
You know, which is always really interesting to me. But ghetto is just kind of, it's one of those words that has a connotation that we kind of accept or know, but it doesn't have any real meaning.
That's true. That's true. Like, there's really isn't a ghetto anything, because there are plenty of people living in the ghetto, I'm using quotes here, whose name are Pam. Pam and Mary and Sandy live in the ghetto, and I knew a white girl named Keisha. I went to my college. Oh, we got planes flying over. I knew a white girl in college. His name was Keisha.
I know a quote unquote white Keisha as well.
So there you go. I wonder how many jobs she got turned down from. That's something to think about. But the thing y'all were talking about, like Raven-Symoné, seemingly the one child star that didn't like fall into that whole trend of child stars losing their damn minds. Her father, from what I understand, released a statement because he had people contacting him saying, I can't believe your daughter thinks this way. I'm not buying your book if the child that you raised has that kind of mentality. It's like, well, he says she's grown. This is an adult. I managed her up until she got to a point where she can manage herself. She's got her own team. She's got her own thing. So these opinions that she's coming, and even he said that sometimes his daughter says something stupid. So I don't know where she got the idea of this respectability politics, and I'm not black, and I'm from every continent in Africa and every continent in Europe. And, you know, this thing where she just does it, I guess it's just easier to just not be black, and it is. It's easier. Like, it's easy to say, well, damn it, I'm not black. But when you've got the fame and the means to, quote, unquote, not be black, I guess you can just choose that out. I don't know.
But how do you choose that? Because clearly, who is she not black to?
Okay, hold on just one moment. I've got some sirens in the background, so I can't really hear you. Okay. So if you're not speaking, if you could just mute your mics just quickly, that way we can hear whoever's speaking.
I was just saying that whole statement about not being black is so ridiculous. Because who is she selling that to? Clearly, white America sees Raven-Symoné as a black person. African American people, black people see Raven-Symoné as a black person. So the statement was so egregious because it just didn't resonate anywhere. It just made her seem even more ridiculous. So I don't know about this not being black thing. Who does that work? Who is she speaking to? Who is she expecting to hear her make that statement and come into any kind of agreement with that? I just can't understand what I'm saying. The only thing I can say with that is, I think someone said it earlier, this is about trying, quote unquote, to be relevant. It is, I'm coming on The View, and in order to keep this job, I have to be as ridiculous as I possibly can. I think that's what we're saying with Raven-Symoné.
Well, I think also she's not very smart. I mean, as a person, she doesn't seem to be very smart, and that's why she's going to the ridiculous level. Because the few times I've watched The View and stuff, it's supposed to be kind of a news talky show. She doesn't have anything to bring to the table intellectually, so she has to be the character, or she doesn't have a spot on the show really. There's no depth to her,
which I think is another weird thing, because she almost plays this like sassy black, sister. That's her persona on the show. Even when she's making these statements, she was still giving off that air. And it's such a weird dichotomy to see someone rewarded for almost a pantomimish behavior and then condemning an entire group of people based on antiquated notions of discrimination. So it's just a weird thing. And it does seem like an act, but also on some level, I do think she kind of believes this crap that she says. But who knows? I mean,
I kind of wonder how much of a Cosby influence there is on some of these opinions that she's having.
When you say Cosby, you mean Bill Cosby himself, or just being
as far I mean, because she worked with him for how many years? Like from the time she was 7. And I guess, she still had some kind of contact with her. So I'm just wondering, as far as, the respectability, how much of that kind of influenced her? Because Lord knows he's always out there telling black folks to tone it down and to do this and to pull your pants up and act a certain kind of way.
Yeah, it may not even just be Cosby himself, even though I do think he probably is very influential in her life and her career. I think she probably has that talented sentimentality. She sees herself as separate and apart from a certain segment of the black community, and she looks down on them. And I don't there's no way that we could really know what Raven-Symoné is really like and what she really thinks. So we can only discuss her in terms of what she presents. And on The View, I think that's why she is on The View, because she's supposed to be this sassy black woman who was a child star and was on the Cosby Show and self-made, all this stuff, but actually holds some pretty anti-black views because it's supposed to be controversial. I think that's the role she's playing. I don't know if that's how she really is or if that's what she's decided to portray in order to get paid. But either way, it's problematic.
She definitely does have this air of superiority. She kind of feels like she's above a certain group of people. And, that every woman on that show kind of has their little shtick, their little what makes them them, and she's got this, she does have that sassy black woman. At least that's what it felt like when she came on the show initially. But for her to continue to degrade black people and deny her blackness is getting a little ridiculous.
Yeah, so that's...
I think Hiroja hit the nail on the head. I think some of it, too, is just she's just not that bright. Not smart.
Yeah, because I don't really recall her actually weighing in on social issues prior to The View. So I'm curious what made them decide that Raven would be a good fit for the show. I've never heard her weigh in on anything, ever, that I can think of.
And when she does, ridiculousness comes out of her mouth. Like, remember that Obama statement from when that guy said something comparing, I think he compared Michelle Obama to a monkey, and she co-signed it like it was not a big deal. Like, oh, that was just, you know, ha 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 funniness. And it's like, no.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that was part of her getting the job was some of these thoughts that I'm sure she relayed during her meetings with the powers that be for the position. And I'm sure they thought, oh yeah, this is going to bring some controversy, some free media to us, like she's going to bring that group to us.
Right. I think people started listening to her when she started speaking out about her sexuality or not speaking out about her sexuality. So I think she established a platform there, and then that kind of created some interest around her. I think that's the point when she even started like having a voice, because prior to, she was That's So Raven, like that's what people called her, That's So Raven. But now she's this other thing that's just crazy. She's just crazy. And I don't care if it's like a shtick or this is how she really is. Either way, like, she's nuts.
It's disappointing. It's very disappointing, actually. Because she really was. Like, I was thinking to myself, Journey Smollett, Keke Palmer, and Raven Simone. I thought of them as like the magic 3 black girls in Hollywood. The ones that were out there. They were the anti-Lindsay, Lindsay Lohan, the girl that used to be anti-Miley Cyrus. Like, they were the girls that other little black girls could look up to and say, you know what, you can be out there and have some sense and be in Hollywood and represent black girls of all kinds around the world. And then she opened her mouth, and I don't know what happened. Like, my heart breaks. It really does.
But there's a lesson there, because I think there's a danger in thinking that there's a right kind of black girl to be. And so when we have these, archetypes of people that we think represent us well, I think it goes to show you that, looks can be deceiving and appearances are not always what they seem, or certainly how they're projected. So I think about all the girls that maybe didn't look as squeaky clean as Keke and as Journey and as Raven, but would have been better role models for young women and young girls. So that's interesting.
Good point. Now, while talking about embracing blackness, and this is our final topic before we close it out. Recently, D-Ray McKesson, who is prominent in the Black Lives Matter movement, tweets out his usual "I love your blackness" on the Twitter. And Piers Morgan, who used to have a TV show, the British guy who used to have a TV show on CNN, decided he was going to troll black Twitter by responding with, "I love my whiteness and your blackness too." Then he follows it with something about black Twitter is racist kind of tweet. So, and of course, people came for him, and he just didn't get it. Because let's discuss if and how black is a culture while white isn't. Like, what is it that when we say we love our blackness, that has a different kind of weight than when somebody white says, well, I love my whiteness?
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind, Leslie, is that there doesn't need to be an affirming of anyone's whiteness. Like, we know you love it, everybody else does too, and there's no reason for it. We have to look behind the reason why we say the things that we do. It goes beyond culture. It speaks to a need for us to put these positive views about ourselves out in the world. We know that we love ourselves, and see how people react. This whole situation with Piers, and also, a little bit with Raven, like we were just talking about, is something that I wrote about maybe 8 months ago called exposure trolling, which is these people that utilize the anger of black people and insulting black people for marketing and monetary and exposure gain. And it's really gotten to, my opinion, I see it so often now. I thought we had reached its peak a couple of weeks ago, but it seems to be part of people's actual marketing plans at this point. It's like, oh, you want to get some exposure, you want to be trending, piss Black Twitter off, and boom, you're in there. And I'm not saying this because I don't think we should respond. I'm all about responding. Listen, there's no shade in that, and I think it's great. We have every right to do that. But I do think it's important to start looking at how people are utilizing us and what we would want to do to potentially still hit them back, but not give them the clicks and the looks that they're searching for through us and through insulting us.
I just want to add to that too, Leslie. I think it's also kind of grown some arms, and at the same time, it's something because social media and the internet is exposing things because more and more people have voices that previously couldn't have voices before, exposing things that have always been happening. I mean, if you look at those YouTube videos of those white boys going into the ghetto and pranking people. I mean, I recently saw a video on YouTube where these guys, they like kind of do like a jackass thing where they went up to groups of black men or individually black men and tried to fight them, and then they took their clothes off and they're wearing like kind of like a bathing suit type of thing. And in one of the videos, they ended up going to a group of young black men and doing this, and I guess they were in Compton, California or whatever, and someone pulled a gun on them and they didn't even know it because their back was turned, and they could easily have been, shot or killed because they're deliberately trying to provoke and get a reaction from people. And they're deliberately going to places that they know they can get a reaction and make some money. And this video had like thousands of views, and I'm sure it's gotten higher, but there's been other similar types of videos and views of people doing this, and it's just frightening and sickening at the same time. Because these white people will not be blamed for it. It will be the black culture. It's the black culture that's going to be blamed for reacting in such a negative way or being angry, or in the case of Pierce Morgan, being racist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I think about black culture and what exactly that means. As Black Americans, so many of us, like, we just do not have that connection with our African roots. Like, clearly, we are not from America. This is not our origin. But so many of us just do not have that connection other than what we may see on TV or just, almost even what we kind of feel inside. But outside of that, it's like there's just not that tangible connection like so many, like, second and third generation people. So it's like we're kind of almost looking from slavery on. And so many of us identify as Black American. And so there's a rich culture and rich history that comes with Black Americans when you look at our innovations and you look at the struggle through civil rights and from slavery on, all of the fights that we had to go through just to get to where we are now. And now we have a Black president sitting in the White House. So there's this pride that's linked with this very new identity. You figure it's 150, 160 years if we go back to like the emancipation. So if we just go back just that far, it goes even further than that. But it's very new. And so I think we just do identify that as a culture because we have built our own identity on this continent here, as opposed to like white is just, it could be anything. Like, it's not that he even said I celebrate being Irish, which he most likely can identify with. He could probably trace back a couple of generations to wherever he came from. He's from British, so he can trace back to his British culture. He didn't say I love being British or anything like that. So I think that for some reason they just don't see it the same way. Like, there's just, I don't see what culture white is other than white supremacy, which is what we're operating under.
He sees it as, for me, I just think, this is Kim, I think, he just sees it from being white, just his color. And, I agree with Leslie. This was a chance for him to become relevant for a minute and ride on the coattails of Black Lives Matter. He has had nothing to say for the longest time, and he hasn't been relevant in the public eye. So here's his chance to say something, and everyone's talking about it now. And it makes a lot of white folks very uncomfortable. When a black person says, I love my blackness, I love who I am, it makes them uncomfortable. And now that we have all of these outlets for people to have their outbursts and everyone to see it, then, it's okay, for him to say that. It makes it okay. Whenever, when you feel uncomfortable, you have to say something to make yourself feel comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're exactly right. Statements like that, or when they go on Twitter and say, you know, what about all lives matter, or don't white girls rock too? No, that's just trying to recenter themselves in dialogue that's not about them. Is there such a thing as white culture? I don't know. I mean, there's like a love of mayonnaise that exists. Now let me stop playing. I mean, because I want to say that I want to even try to say, well, white culture is mainstream culture, but even that's not true or accurate. I don't know. I think making claims like that there's a white culture, I mean, I'm sure European culture, there's certainly an American culture, and those are two distinct things. Even like, you can't even, what's American, that's not even, you can't talk about something that's like America really, I hate to say it, America really is black culture.
There you go.
And I don't hate to say it. I'm just going to be really, that's just the facts. American culture is the culture of people of color. American music, like the original American music is the Negro spiritual. And then there's blues and jazz. Like all American music came from black people. What we consider American food, for the most part, either came from black people or Native Americans or Europeans. It's like some kind of hybrid. And that's what American is. So I don't know. There is no white culture. That's the answer. There is no white culture.
And I think that when you, this is Kim, I could see him feeling like I'm losing myself. Like, to be white, like, they're losing themselves. With the hype, with all of this, the adoption of the black culture, like, they're losing their sense of self. And I think a lot of white people, at least a lot that I've talked to, are feeling lost right now. So, they have to say, I'm still here. I still love my whiteness. It's like that. It's being lost.
To me, it's not them losing themselves. I say all the time, like, the most difficult day in the process of ensuring that Black Lives Matter will be the day when every average white dude realizes how unimpressive they are. And to me, that is what we see when we have these things bubble up from people like Piers Morgan and lots of other folks as well, is this idea that has been sold to them that they're exceptional, that their success is so impressive, when in reality, our entire society is set up for people like them to succeed. So them succeeding is not exceptional. It's not amazing. It's not something that is so great that we need to all be marveling at it, which is what they've been steeped in their whole lives. And that's what the idea about saying that I love your blackness confronts, because if blackness is okay, then everything they believe about themselves and their exceptionality is challenged in that same phrase as well. So, yeah.
Right. Because they're stuck in like this hegemonic thinking in which, in order for, like, I can't be great and you also be great. Like, someone has to be greater and someone has to be the greatest. And if it's not me, then that means it's you or it's you. And I don't want that. Like, but if we could all just accept, first of all, like, the thing is, white people who say this kind of stuff, they have a problem with other people being empowered. Because they do, like you said, they perceive it as a loss of their power.
Yeah, and it's funny because you don't hear it until people of color proclaim love for self. So, like, you don't hear white girls rock until black girls rock is trending. You don't hear I love my whiteness until you hear I love my blackness. You don't hear all lives matter until you hear Black Lives Matter. It's basically like of just a response call as a way to shout down and tell you, you know what, no, you don't need to be talking about yourself. Shut up. It's like shutting us up whenever we start feeling good about ourselves and letting other people know that, damn it, we the shit.
That's true.
Anyone else want to weigh in? Miss Bliss?
You know, I'm just listening to what everyone's saying, and you know, I don't know for me if it matters what Piers Morgan thinks or says, because I know, again, that Piers Morgan is a personality, and I think someone said earlier that personalities do whatever they need to do to stay relevant. I don't even know that Piers Morgan believes what Piers Morgan says. I think that Piers Morgan, like Raven, if the timing is right and there's a feeling of a losing attention in the public eye, then they'll put out something ridiculous. So, you know, I could care not. But again, I agree with a lot of what was said this evening. You know, white power has always been about the destruction and hatred of black culture and black power. And that is the difference between white power and black power. And when black folks say black power, it is about loving and embracing and acceptance of self. When white people say white power, it is always about repressing, oppressing mostly people of color. So, because and I say mostly people of color because there's also that socioeconomic thing that goes on with that too, depending on where that's coming from. So, you know, I think that black people, we as black people collectively need to not give that energy. I mean, I hadn't even heard the comment, because a lot of stuff that I see, I just can't give my energy to. I'm so busy looking at what's going on with amongst ourselves, some of the craziness that comes from our own folks. I want to see that corrected first. I want to see our brothers stop with this misogyny. I want to, you know, I'm focused on correcting within the self, because until we correct what's going on within our community, it doesn't matter what white folks do. I mean, we have so much work to be done within our own unit. White people are going to keep coming for us. They are going to keep coming as long as they find opening, as long as we give them energy. But when we come to this place where we work our own stuff out, we're powerful, and we never just reach that place. I mean, I was, while we were talking, I was thinking about, you know, the ridiculousness of what we say to remain relevant. Back to Raven. But earlier tonight, someone told me about Jamal Bryant making a comparison that made no sense of Trayvon's mother to Rosa Parks. The comparison made no sense, and he's a smart man, but I think people just say stuff just to get the attention. I mean, I think about some of the stuff that Ben Carson says. I know he's a Republican, I know he's running, but some of that stuff doesn't even make logical sense. And I think that we've come to a place, there was a rapper, I can't remember which one said it, but, you know, the root of all evil now seems to be attention. Being able to get attention, and people don't seem to know how they do it. They don't care what they say. They don't even care if it goes against their brand. It is just like, let me say something, let me do something so ridiculous so that people turn their heads. And I think the stakes get higher and higher when you're talking about social media, and our attention span getting shorter and shorter. So you know, that's where I am. I mean, you know, kind of looking at this and listening to all this. Everything that everyone said was really relevant. But it's so much, the picture is so big. There's so much in this for us that, you know, to hell with Piers Morgan, because he'll say something stupid tomorrow. And, you know, that's, you know, and that's to keep the attention going. He don't have a show. What is he going to do? I mean, you know. Yeah, let me
do y'all think people are using Black Twitter, like that Black Twitter response, as like free marketing, like free publicity?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that happens. And I think that there's always a distraction, and you know what, I'm not going to go too deep into this, but I think there's always a distraction when black people start to focus on getting and working through black issues. I think we always get distracted, and I think some of the distractions that we have seen have had to do with sexuality and changes in sexuality that have become what I see as media agendas And I think that, if you go back to look at historically, at the end of the Civil Rights, you had white feminism stepping in, and that was that new movement. It was distracting from the Civil Rights movement. You're talking about late 60s and early 70s. I think that there's always something that gets thrown in to distract us. So I think we need to be real clear about what our history has been and what it is now. So.
I didn't quite catch the beginning of the statement. I missed that. Something about sexuality being a distraction. I missed that part.
I think that the media has spent a whole lot of time really force feeding us these ideas about gender and telling us how the politically correct way to gender and trans and acceptance and sexuality. And I think that for a lot of us it's been distracting. I think it's been distracting from the Black Lives Matter movement because we see subcultures of that happening where we're starting to debate whether or not versus the straight community versus the trans community, who's getting the most discrimination. I mean, I've seen those kinds of debates going on, and I'm thinking, why are we debating when we need to be talking about the collective? Why are we subgrouping ourselves? But that's the kind of stuff that happens. We find there are ways that we get distracted, and there's always stuff that gets sent out to us to divide us. I think it happens all the time. And I was talking about historically, if you go back, and I don't want to take too much time because I know we're supposed to be ending at 8:30, but if you look at the end of the civil rights movement, we went into the feminist movement. And what people don't understand from that is that's when you started to see black families breaking up, when you had the introduction of feminism and jobs that were supposed to be open for women, but they were really open for white women and not black women. You had welfare coming in, and it really was the beginning of the breakup of the black family. So you really have to understand historically what has always been done. There's always been an agenda against people of color, and the government has always had a hand in it. And I don't think it's any different now.
I agree with you that there's always been government's hand in coming after black people, but I definitely don't think that issues that relate to sexuality and gender are a distraction. Because there are black people that are trans, and there are black people that are members of the LGBTQI community, and their freedom is tied into all of us. When we say that rising tide lifts all boats, like, we want to make sure that the most vulnerable of us are the ones that we are focused on. Because if they're taken care of, then the rest of us are. I think it's really been disturbing for me to see so many people pitch the fact that so many trans black men and women have been killed this year and continues to be plagued. The fact that the average black trans woman has a life expectancy of 35 years old, that is not something that's separate from the fight for black lives. And if we think that black lives matter, then they all have to matter.
And I don't disagree with you, but what I was saying about that is that there is this information about, there's a comparison of the trans life expectancy to the black life expectancy. And I think that we, at this point, because black life is very, very fragile in this country, I don't think that now is the time for us to be doing those divides. That's what I'm talking about. And I think that you also have to understand that with this movement is about money, because I also work on the side in the medical community. There's been in terms of real understanding psychologically about what's happening. There has been no strides in that in terms of the psychological community. But what has happened is in the surgical community, where you make money, and in the drug community, the pharmaceutical community, in terms of promoting those drugs for trans folks, there has been a lot of strides in that, and there's been a lot of money that's starting to be made from that. And I think that we need to be more aware of what's going on. We need to be asking more questions. And I know that's off on another tangent, but I think that sometimes we need to not just accept things as we just see them. I think we need to start asking more questions.
Well, I know. I trust trans women and men that I talk to. That's the truth that I listen to. And if they say that they are being discriminated against, treated badly by black people, then that's something that we all should be listening to. That's where I put my personal effort.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree. Well, so I think part of our problem is that we feel like we think in dichotomies, or whether this is perceived or real, but this belief that we can only focus on one issue at a time I'm fully capable of believing that Black Lives Matter and understanding that Black Lives Matter includes Black trans lives.
And it's
I also
good.
believe all trans lives matter. So, I don't know. Like, I definitely can see where you're coming from when you talk about government manipulation and involvement in oppression. I can also agree with you when you talk about the way the white feminist movement, how it operated post the civil rights movement and the gay rights movement, because we feel like these are not the same issues. Like, as far as feminism is concerned, Black women been working outside the home. Like, that's not a new thing. It was something new and liberating for white women. Black women have been sexualized. Like, that's not... So, like, what I'm saying is, there are all these spaces where you get into one ism, but there's, like, another. Like, if I'm a Black woman who has feminist principles, then somehow I'm anti-Black. Or as a lesbian, I can't necessarily, like, if I wave a pride flag, it's like, well, where's your RBG flag? You know, because we feel like people can't have multiple identities and that we can't, you know, present these all at the same time. Like, a person is allowed to be Black and trans and, you know, or female or male, queer. Like, we're allowed to we have multiple identities. And I don't think we have to necessarily possess those identities to believe that those identities matter in other people.
And I think, too, there's a level of that argument. I mean, we hear it all the time from white feminists, and where their cause is supposed to trump the needs of Black women. And we hear it from Black men when they say that their cause needs to be held in higher regard than that of Black women. So I don't know. It's just weird to me to hear, like, oh, we shouldn't be splitting statistics about life expectancy. But I hear we talk all the time about the fact that that 84 cents on the dollar figure when it comes to wages and women, that's for white women. And for Black women and Latino women, it's lower. And we always want to make sure we make that point. So I'm a little hazy on where this line gets drawn as to what's important and what isn't. And I do agree that we need to be caring about all of these things in conjunction. This isn't you know, one of the biggest flaws of the civil rights movement is not white feminism. It's that they were not intersectional and that they did not acknowledge the contributions of women, the contributions of gay and lesbian people in that movement, and it led to its demise. So I don't want to see any movement that I'm a part of make those same mistakes. If we're going to learn from the past, then we need to be honest about the past. The civil rights was not some sort of Shangri-La, everything was wonderful and everybody got along and no bad things were done to people movement. Stuff happened that was bad, and we need to correct those if we're going to move forward as a people and continue to build a world that's free for all of us. Not just free for some, and then we'll get to you guys later. That just doesn't.
You know what? And I agree with you. What I was saying is that I think that what happens is that white people generally put up information for us that is divisive. And I think we fall into, and maybe I wasn't clear in stating what I was saying, I think that we fall into the traps of the division that white people set up for us instead of, and I agree, I think the civil rights movement wasn't a movement. They were contributing. Am I still here? I'm sorry. I think I was muting. Did I mute myself?
Yeah,
I think that it's for us to make those decisions about how we do our inclusion and how we handle intersectionality instead of having white folks tell us. And I think that that's the trap that we're getting into, because I will tell you, as soon as the whole Caitlyn thing came about, I saw Black people telling each other they were going to unfollow and unfriend and not talk to because the opinions weren't the same. I mean, I think that's insane of us, and I think we get into that. We let the white agenda kind of let us or guide us into how we're going to think and feel, and I think it has been more divisive for us. That I think the intersectionalities we need to examine and we need to handle amongst ourselves. And I don't know if that makes sense, but I've had these conversations several times on my show about how that works and how we can't allow white feminism to decide what feminism is for Black women, because it is not the same. I'm sorry, it is. We've always worked. We've always been a part of that, of the working community, and they came in at a time that pushed our men out of the workforce. And right now, that division about what gender is in our community, who's a woman, who's not, and how we relate to the statistics of death amongst women versus black women, I think that the tension there, I think that it is important, but I think that the way that it's been presented and how I've seen it is more divisive than it is unifying.
Okay, well, I hate to stop the conversation because I can see this could probably go on for a while. Matter of fact, we were supposed to have two different round tables, and white feminism, black feminism, womanism, where do we fit in, was actually going to be one of the topics, but I see that's going to have to be tabled for the next one. Are we going to do this again, ladies?
Yeah, for sure. I'm down.
Absolutely.
Sure, yeah.
All right, so we will definitely address this because it's certainly something we need to talk about. But I want to thank all of you for joining us. Thank you, Tiffani, CJ, Hiroja, Kymberly, Nichole, Miss Leslie Mack, Matthews-Calloway, and Miss Vicki Doe, who unfortunately had some sound issues, so she wasn't able to finish out the round table with us. If you check, I will upload this and I will have the information available. I'm sure this will probably be on YouTube as well as iTunes, Stitcher. The other ladies, you will also have access to this recording to use as you please. And we will have the information for all of the podcasts, so you can check us all out and all of our contact information. And thank you, everyone, for joining in this conversation, and we will definitely do this again another night. Have a good one.
Peace. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Enjoy, y'all.
Yeah.
Yeah. Here's another one. And another one. Yeah. From Little Kim, the Queen Bee. It's ladies' night, what? It must be Angie on the mic. The butter pea, honey, got the sugar, got the spice. Roll the L tight. Keep the rhymes right, yo. I just made this motherfucker up last night. And I'm the rookie on this all-star team. Me and Kim is getting cream. Like Thelma and Louise, but on chrome. Never leave that Brooklyn shit alone. So if you say it's on, then it's on. Bang this in your whip. Pack them cold roadie with the chips in the wrist. Here's a French kick. I dismiss all you chicks. Spit 6 from the 4th, 5th. Make it dance. Ow! I stay focused in the dope like a penny with a hole in it. Y'all just hopeless and topless. I ain't lying. Trying to knock me off. Keep trying. All it takes is one phone call to my street team. Promote that. Got head soundtrack. You jack. Sit there. Send it off with the 850. Y'all missing the buck with the bump. Biggie in the truck. In the buck to my double. Let me see you do the bank head if you're rich. It's the rap made rep the QB. And I got all my sisters with me. Choking your paragraph. We laugh, get you back up on the right path. Ain't no stopping me ladies from club hopping, get my rock on. From flavors to frozen, that paradise joint. Booty shaking with the glass to my left one. Right hand saying stepson. To me, my girls is fancy fly misses. To my niggas, straight snitches. And to the mother Chicos, Lady Pimp ain't taking that trip. If you ain't got the cash to stash, catch a brick. Strictly your bell ringer. Lay another finger on this big bad wolf, Miss Lady Rap Singer. I be the one to blame as the flames keep rising to the top. And it don't stop. To notice the dope assistants approaching with good intentions, but focusing on their riches. If it's too hot, then get that behave out the kitchen. Listen carefully. I don't give a damn if you don't care for me. The rhythm I keep, plus I'm like a rhythm I keep. Feeling the weight, cause of off the 9 milli lubricant. Let us bust, we just keep kicking up dust. And you can spread rumors, it's just making me sick of the head tumors. Humor me by hugging me, saying you loving me. Envious player haters be bucking. I could tell cause the thug in me wanna do illegal things. But these need to give me more with these BBs and M3s, DTs from overseas, pimped out that rollies. I'm from the police, keep my wallet on beat. Who the Windy City woman still coming and gunning straight from the shot. Tonight's the night for the ladies be keeping it tight.
am. You know what I'm saying? I ain't even gonna leave without saying something on this track. You ain't gonna use me to just be singing hooks. What I look like? Patti LaBelle or somebody?